Welcome to the Find Your Glow free webinar. Now, if you are here, you are already in the upper echelon of understanding how to heal holistically, taking agency over your life to even want to change and empower yourself with knowledge that women don't have access to. And this is why I created this webinar, because you deserve to know how your female body works, how the mind thrives, how to work with your hormones, work with your, I guess, biology instead of living the way society tells you to live, which is not very female focused. And it's a huge driver behind why we are chronically sick. So if you're here, I just want to say you are doing great for yourself already. You are going to leave feeling so much more informed, so much more empowered, and that puts you in the top 10% of women in general, especially in a Western society. So let's go ahead and begin, shall we, with the agenda. So this is what we're running through today, the average female experience, which I'm sure everyone can relate to in some way or another. Then we're going to move into hormones. Now, I'm not going to go into the full-on menstrual cycle. We don't have time for that, although I have heaps of resources on that. And if you need more assistance, we can definitely talk about it and I can point you in the right direction. Then we're going to start talking about gut health and actually healing through nutrition, because nutrition is very powerful as a form of medicine. Train like a lady. So this is how to train without burnout, how to get snatched, how to get strong without doing too much. Okay. Then the big stuff, the heavy stuff, the trauma, the dysregulated nervous system. How do you begin getting in body and actually regulating? Okay. Then we're going to finish off talking about the Glow Blueprint, which, if you don't already know, is the 10-week group program that I'm running. And this is more in depth, definitely everything we're covering today times 100. So you're getting a taste of it today. But if you want to work with me, then we'll talk about what the Glow Blueprint is, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So for just some quick housekeeping, if you have questions, I want you to put them in the chat box, okay? So there should be like a bar in your Zoom window where you can put all your questions in. I will get through to them at the end, okay? Just so that we have enough time to cover off everything. And yeah, I guess that is the agenda. So moving on to my story. I'm not going to harp on about my story because it's a lot, okay? Although I do have a link to a YouTube video that I filmed which talks about my journey. So I was obviously a gym girl who was living a so-called healthy life. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was hitting my protein and my macros and I was training. And yet I ended up chronically sick for 2 years from a myriad of health problems. And that really launched my healing journey. That taught me, what it means to live in alignment and to honor and respect your femininity. I studied a Bachelor of Physiology, and that obviously gave me a really good basis. But getting into holistic healing, working with nervous system practitioners and holistic health coaches and naturopaths, and enrolling in courses and mentorships and academies really set me up over those 2 years. And I was successful in healing myself. And I'm actually very thankful that I actually get to help other women heal, right? And that is what kind of brought Glow about. So if we think about the best compliment a woman could ever receive, what is it? Girl, you are glowing, right? And I truly believe that glow starts from within. You don't have to cake your face. You don't have to cover up what you don't like with cosmetic procedures and beauty treatments when you are truly glowing from within, when you are letting that glow shine, okay? And unfortunately, we live in a society where our glows are very stunted. We are forced to live like men, work a 9 to 5 like a man, even though we actually have a 28-day hormone cycle, which means we can't produce, we can't perform, we can't, output as much and as consistently as a man does, yet the expectations are the same, while still being fertile and having kids and raising a family and creating a household. And you're doing all the same things a man does. I can see how that could totally mess up generations of women. And that's essentially what's happened. Even studies into exercise science, sleep science, hormones, nervous system, like they didn't even really look at women up until recently. And then they come out and say, oh, actually, we were wrong. Women need more sleep than men. women shouldn't work like men. Women shouldn't train like men. Women actually need to eat differently at different stages of the month. And so there is a lot of misinformation and expectations on a woman to perform and live in a certain way that is just not conducive with how we were designed to live. And that is what Glow is designed to teach. Okay. It is a very female focused approach. It's a holistic approach. And if you don't know what holistic means, we're about to get into that. But it is also a way to help you live in a world and operate in a world where you can show up as your best. Show up as your best at work, in the gym, in your home life and family life, within yourself, even just the way you talk to yourself, right? And essentially help you get your what? Your glow back. Okay. So, what is holistic healing? There are two kinds of, I guess, healing principles. You have allopathic, which is the Western medicine approach, and then the holistic approach, which is looking at all of you, not just your body and not just the symptoms, but looking at your mind, your body, your soul, and aiming to find the root cause. And I think this is the biggest disconnect that we have nowadays. Like back in actually all of human history, we've always relied on a holistic approach. We've always used nature as medicine. We've always used herbs, we've used communities, we've used food, we've used slowing down as a way to heal holistically. And now we're in a society in the last few hundred years where you're treated at the level of the symptom. No one really gets down to the level of the cause, the root cause. And you're looking at everything separately. Okay. Oh, you have this issue and that issue and that issue. Let's treat them separately rather than seeing how they all connect. Okay. And I think a big part of it as well is that allopathic medicine does not actually help the body heal itself. And this is a key distinction. Healing is actually something your body was created and designed to do. It's about getting into a healing state to help the body help itself. Okay. Yes, you can have supplements and take herbs and do certain biohacks and changes in your lifestyle that can support it. But at the end of the day, your body actually has the healing power itself, something that people do not get empowered by and realize and actually get into. And that's what holistic healing is all about to me. Okay. You are more than a body. And especially as a woman, you are very holistic as it is. When you get emotionally upset, what happens? You end up feeling really unwell. When you go through something in work, it affects your home life. We can't really compartmentalize like men do. Okay. We are very holistic, and that way we need to learn how to work with it. Okay. We need to approach our lifestyles in a holistic way because that's how we are. So let's get started with female hormones and birth control. Okay. Now, from the jump, let me just say this. Most women don't even know what their sex hormones are and what they do. So let's talk about the three main hormones that you need to know about: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And yes, women do make and need testosterone. It's not just a male hormone. I bet you didn't know that. Let's talk about estrogen. Estrogen helps us get shit done. That's the best way to explain it. Estrogen makes us feel good. It builds things up. It builds up our endometrium lining. So that is the lining around your uterus that builds up throughout the month to prepare for a potential baby. And then when a baby doesn't happen, an egg doesn't get fertilized, we shed that lining. And that is the period that we get. That's the bleed. So estrogen is responsible for building that up. It also builds up our cardio, our strength, our bone density, our muscle mass. Okay. So it's a really good time for you to go hard in your training. Do the HIIT workouts, do the sprints, do the long distance running, do the powerlifting, the CrossFit, the bodybuilding, go hard. Okay. It's also a good time to eat carbs. Okay. And that is because estrogen actually works with insulin to improve our carbohydrate metabolism. So we can metabolize carbs better. We don't puff up as much when we eat them. Okay. It also helps activate our brain. So estrogen is associated with activation, excitation, and that is so that we can do shit. Okay. So it builds up your serotonin and dopamine, which are neurotransmitters in the brain that tell you to strive for something. Dopamine is associated with the reward system. Go and work hard for something and get that hit of dopamine, right? Serotonin is our feel good hormone. And this is what we associate with womanhood, right? Estrogen is how we feel our best. But she's also a bit of a drama queen. She is, like I said, associated with excitation, but too much estrogen means that we are always excited, and not in the good way. Overly nervous, overly jittery, too activated, very hard to kind of calm down and rest, okay? And this is where we introduce you to her sister, which is the polar opposite, progesterone. Progesterone is the chill girl. She just wants to sleep. She wants to relax. She doesn't want to go too hard at the gym or too hard at work. And she just wants to focus on regenerating. Okay. So, progesterone, progestation. Gestation means life. Okay. And when you think about gestation, you might probably think about pregnancy. That's because progesterone is responsible, or it's like dominant during pregnancy. So when you see elevated levels of progesterone for months and months, you're pregnant, okay? But it's not just about pregnancy, it's about you, okay? It is very anti-aging. And that's why when women hit menopause and they stop making progesterone, they start getting wrinkles. And if you have chronic low levels of progesterone, like most of the female population has, unfortunately, it could mean that you age earlier. It could mean that you get wrinkles faster. It means that your brain can't regenerate as well, because progesterone has a very healing, regenerative, and calming effect on the brain. It mimics an inhibitory neurotransmitter called GABA. That was a mouthful. Let me break it down. So, serotonin and dopamine, we all know what those are. They make us feel good and activate us to go. GABA is the opposite. GABA wants to slow down, and it inhibits and calms the brain. And progesterone works similarly. Okay. So what often happens is we see these hormonal changes happen in the month, and we're taught, we're conditioned, we are expected to fight against that. Even though every sign in your body is telling you slow down, rest. This is after you ovulate. That's when progesterone is starting to pick up. That's when women start to get tired. That's when women start to experience PMS, and you just can't do as much as you did when estrogen was very dominant. We fight against it. And what happens when you fight against that? You're running on cortisol, your stress hormone. And this is a very problematic issue, because cortisol and progesterone are made up of the same starting materials or ingredients. So they're both made up of the same things. But what happens when you're just running on cortisol? You need to make a lot of cortisol. There's not enough ingredients left to make your progesterone. And so when cortisol goes up, progesterone, sorry, goes down. This is not good. And we see in PMS, in PMDD, in bad periods, this low progesterone from being in this really chronic state, ignoring the fact that you need to rest and chill out. In the second half of the cycle, we see this make periods a terrible experience every month. And we'll talk about that later on. But progesterone is very important. We need her, we need to respect her, and we need to listen to what she wants the body to do. Okay. Testosterone. Now, this is actually a hormone that is very important for us. We get small peaks, specifically when we ovulate. So, just to give you a quick rundown, you have the first 2 weeks of your period of your cycle between when you finish bleeding and ovulation. This is your estrogen dominant phase. You ovulate, that's when the egg gets released. That's when you get a huge peak in testosterone, or that's when testosterone is the highest. Okay. And then after ovulation to when you start your bleed, that's the luteal phase. That's the progesterone, the slow down phase. Okay. Ovulation. I'm sure you guys have heard of the post ovulation clarity, which is like post nut clarity for men. It's what the hell happens to a woman when she's ovulating? She's in heat, right? She just wants to hump like a dog. She wants to compete, and she's motivated, and her heart rate goes up, and even her body temperature goes up, and she's ready to push hard at the gym, and she wants to get her freak on, and she just feels like what? Like a little dude, basically. That is the testosterone peak. It's huge in helping us build muscle, in strengthening our ligaments and our tendons and our bones. It increases dopamine, which is that pleasure, that motivation, that desire to get things done, associated with that ambition, you know? And of course, it helps us enjoy sex, because it increases our sexual pleasure, makes us more aroused. And it also helps us, you know, have good blood flow to the clitoris and good wetness, I guess you could say, with vaginal pleasure. Okay. And that's why low testosterone levels are associated with a smaller clitoris, less desire to have sex, and less pleasure in general. Okay. But in saying so, too much testosterone is not good. That's when we get more masculinization. So, yes, you can grow muscle faster. Yes, you do feel more aroused. But at the same time, you start to get more acne. You start to get more facial hair, and that is what we see in PCOS. So more is not better, okay? Let's talk about ovulation. So it is not just making a baby, although yes, it is the only way you can make a baby because that's when the egg gets released from the ovary. It travels to the fallopian tube, awaiting a sperm to come fertilize it, right? But we have this big misinformation about ovulating. It's something that you can put on pause when you don't want to have kids. False, completely false. I want you to take that idea and throw it in the bin. Ovulating is not just about the baby, it's about your vitality. Okay. And I say this with my entire chest when I say a woman cannot be, she can't feel her best, she can't thrive if she is not ovulating. Few reasons why. Firstly, it's the only way you can make progesterone. And we spoke about progesterone. Progesterone is associated with calming the body down. It's associated with good periods. When you have low progesterone, you get PMS, you get PMDD, you get high estrogen and hormonal imbalances. The only way to get progesterone is to ovulate, okay? Because ovulation, that event, is what triggers your brain to start making progesterone. And the fun thing about it is that your synthetic hormones that you get on birth control do not do the same thing. They don't. And people think that, oh, if I'm taking fake progesterone, which is progestin or some fake alternative, I'm getting the same benefits. No, you're not. You know, the reason it can't do the same thing is because it has a different structure, a different molecular structure. Okay. And the issue is if you don't ovulate, you miss out on an opportunity to make progesterone. Over time, over the years, that can accumulate. I like to think of it as you're building up your progesterone stores for later in life, because when you hit menopause, you stop making progesterone, and your body's going to rely on the decades that you spent ovulating and making progesterone. Okay. And so what we see is a lot of women having really, really poor quality of life because they're ovulating 10 times a year instead of 12. They're not ovulating at all for many years because they're on birth control. Okay. And that means that they are diminishing their progesterone stores. They're in famine mode. And you start to see the effects of low progesterone in their lives. And it makes you much less functional post-menopause. So the more you ovulate now, the better you're going to be for future. Um, Now, we also spoke about testosterone and how it peaks during ovulation. When you don't ovulate, you don't get that peak. You don't get the brain benefits. You don't get the sex benefits. You don't get the bone and muscle benefits of testosterone. Ovulation is at the core of balancing the hormones. If you have a hormonal imbalance, you need to start focusing on ovulating and boosting your chances of ovulating. Okay. That's going to look like stressing less. It's going to look like, you know, eating a good diet, making sure that you're not overtraining. There's so much to it. But that is the middle of the seesaw where estrogen's on one side, progesterone's on the other, and ovulation is just managing the two. So this is how you balance your hormones. And when the time comes where you want to make a baby, obviously you've got to have really good ovulation every month on time, 12 times a year, so that you can fall pregnant. And yet many women don't. They do not ovulate. And this is one of the biggest key takeaways I want you to get. I don't want you to think that ovulation is a negotiable. It is not. It is your vitality. It is your future that you're messing with. Do not let society tell you that it is optional, because it is not. Moving on. I know there's a lot on this screen. PMS and PMDD. What we mostly see with these syndromes is too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, too much activation and not enough inhibition. Okay. For those who don't know, PMS is premenstrual syndrome, and this is where you can get physical and psychological symptoms, things from bloating, severe lower back and abdominal pain. You can get headaches, migraines, nausea, and then PMDD is more of the psychological part of that, but taken to an extreme. So we're talking premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So dysphoria of, you know, the world's going to end. I can't do this anymore. Extreme psychological distress, extreme, immense feelings of sadness, suicidal, even, just really bad depression. And these two syndromes are actually not difficult to fix. So let's talk about what causes high estrogen. Two main things. too much estrogen coming in from fake estrogens, and poor gut health. What do I mean by fake estrogens? Plastics, BPA. These are what we call xenoestrogens or fake estrogens. They mimic estrogen. They have a very similar molecular composition. Okay. And so you're flooding the system with plastics from your clothing, like polyester, nylon, synthetic materials, especially like when you're wearing polyester underwear. No, cut it out. Wear 100% cotton underwear. When you're wearing your gym clothes and then you sweat and then your pores open and it takes up all of this microplastics in. We also have phytoestrogens. Phyto just means plant, or, naturally occurring. So things like soy, you may have heard, even wine are very estrogenic. And then cosmetics, fragrances, and just beauty products in general that have endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors basically disrupt your natural hormone making system and again floods the system with too much estrogen. So if you wanted to look at lowering estrogen, I'd be looking at these. Use glass containers. Don't use Teflon when you're cooking. Use stainless steel. Really reduce your toxic load from products. Avoid soy. These are where I would begin. But the second component is your gut health, because your gut is actually responsible for filtering the system of too much estrogen. So even if you are getting huge amounts of estrogen in from the environment and from your natural hormone system, you can still detoxify the body of too much of it. And when you have an inflamed gut, when you have an inflamed liver, when you're not eating enough fiber, this can actually impair the body's ability to filter through. So these are the two areas that I would look at. Now, what are some signs of high estrogen, which are associated with PMS? Excessive nervous energy, because you're too activated. You can't switch over into rest, digest, calming down. Mood swings throughout the month, but especially in the weeks prior to your period. Inflammation, migraines, obviously the gut issues. And if you get really heavy bleeds, really tender breasts in the late luteal phase, like the days leading up to your period and the first days of your bleed, those are signs of high estrogen. Now let's talk about low progesterone. So we've spoken about cortisol, how they have the same building blocks and that your body can't make both essentially at the same time at high levels. Okay, so cortisol is key. Drop your cortisol and your progesterone will naturally come up. Now, another thing we've already spoken about is not ovulating or ovulating late, okay? If you're ovulating 10 times a year instead of 12 because you are having long drawn out cycles, you're not ovulating for maybe, you're not getting your period for past the 30-day mark, 32-day mark, less ovulation, less progesterone, okay? And then low progesterone is associated with insomnia, because when you're not calm and inhibited, you'll end up not sleeping. Mental health problems, because it depletes you of serotonin and dopamine. Excessive fatigue, difficulty concentrating. And that's especially in that, where are we? In the early and late luteal phase. Let's talk about supplements. So lifestyle considerations aside, like improving your gut health, managing stress, which we'll talk about later today, let's talk about supplements that can really help. B6 and magnesium are two supplements that every woman should take regardless. They are very deficient in the population as it is, and they help you calm down. They help you make your hormones, specifically progesterone, and they really work to improve your serotonin and dopamine in the luteal phase. So when they drop in the luteal phase, you want to bring them back up by feeding them or feeding yourself B6 and magnesium. Vitex is actually a herb. It's a herb or a plant called chasteberry, but the label when you buy it from a supplement company would be Vitex. This herb works on the brain and tells the brain to make more progesterone. I guess it's God's gift to womankind, right? Use it, buy it, ingest it. Inositol and berberine are two key supplements if you struggle with a lot of bloating, if you have insulin resistance, if you have PCOS, if you struggle to consume carbohydrates after you ovulate, in the luteal phase, and you really, really get bad reactions and you bloat and puff up, these two supplements are going to save you. MVPs, and really well researched. They basically do the same thing as metformin, great for blood sugar management and very affordable. Milk thistle, if you have an inflamed liver, which is stopping you from detoxifying the estrogen in your body, take milk thistle. If you are on the birth control pill, it can irritate the liver, take milk thistle. It is a powerful antioxidant that works on the liver. And lastly, DIM, which is diindole methane. That is a very core supplement to take when you want to lower your estrogen levels. I wouldn't take this if you think you have high estrogen, because what if you don't? You don't want to drop your estrogen, because that is a problem in and of itself. So get some testing done. DIM is found in cruciferous vegetables like your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, but you would have to take a huge amount every day to take the dosage, the therapeutic dosage necessary. So just take the pill. It really just helps to detoxify the excess estrogen from your body. So last topic on female hormones, birth control. What is the deal with the pill? The pill has been prescribed as a band-aid fix-it-all. If you come to the doctor with hormonal imbalances, anxiety, bad periods, PMS, take the pill. It'll fix everything. Well, the issue is it stops ovulation entirely, which is not a good thing. You don't want to ever stop ovulating, and you definitely don't want synthetic hormones to come in and switch off your natural hormone cycle or process. Like, you want to balance your natural hormones. You can never balance natural hormones when you've switched them off completely. So the idea that the pill balances your hormones is bullshit. Okay. Another thing with the pill is that it depletes you significantly of vitamins, minerals, electrolytes even, and testosterone. So women who are on the birth control pill need to be supplementing, because it messes up your gut and it affects how you digest your food. That means that your B vitamins are going to be significantly depleted, your selenium, which works on your thyroid, which can lower your metabolism, even minerals that can make your hair growth stunt. You could lose hair. You need to be taking core vitamins, and there are plenty of resources online, and as well as the Glow Blueprint course or program that shows you or tells you exactly what you should be supplementing with. And then there's also a lot of research to show that when your testosterone depletes, you have less quality sex. So you get drier, your clitoris shrinks, there's less vaginal pleasure or vaginal tissue development, and it even changes the way you pick partners. Like, being on the pill changes your brain to the point where you choose a more genetically incompatible partner with you. So what happens a lot is women come off the pill after getting married and wanting to have kids, and suddenly they're no longer attracted to their partner, or they just don't feel the same way. And that's because it messes up with your pheromones, and pheromones are all around attraction and what kind of partner you seek. And then lastly, it irritates the gut, because any medical pharmaceutical drug is going to irritate the gut. It messes up the balance of good and bad bacteria, and overall it just inflames your body. The IUD, I like to think of it this way. Your body does not like foreign things in it, and so it will try to get rid of it. And this is not just for the IUD, for breast implants, which is where a lot of women get breast implant illness. For organ transplants even, that's why people who get a liver or a heart transplant, they need to go on immunosuppressants, suppress the immune system, because the immune system is just trying to attack this foreign object in the body. Okay. And when the immune system is constantly activated, this is where you get chronic inflammation. And this is where you can get an autoimmune disease or a chronic illness, because your body is fighting so damn hard. So let's talk about the two kinds of IUDs. The Mirena. Ovulation can still occur, although for the first few months it's not likely. It releases a fake or synthetic progesterone, so it doesn't do the real thing. It also releases, I can never say this, levonorgestrel, which is very testosterone-like. So anything that mimics the effects of estrogen and testosterone is called an androgen. Androgenic effects tend to lead to very masculinization. So we're talking facial hair, acne, increased ability to build muscle. So I guess that's one pro to it. But yeah, if you are flooding the system with an androgen without balancing it with progesterone, you get hormonal issues. We also see a lot of pelvic inflammation. Okay, so that presents as obviously abdominal pain, cramping, lower back pain, weak glutes, pain during sex, and just really affecting the pelvic wall. Okay. And again, it's because there's a lot of inflammation in that area because the body is launching a huge immune attack against it. As for the copper IUD, it's non-hormonal, so it's not actually releasing any hormones, but it is causing a lot of inflammation. Copper is associated with inflammation, and there is something specific called copper toxicity, where too much copper can overactivate you. Okay. So it doesn't just inflame the body, but it inflames the mind. Okay. It causes lots of anxiety, overstimulation, racing thoughts. And a good way to address this would be to start taking zinc, because zinc is the antagonist of copper. So zinc will reduce your copper levels, whereas if you have low copper and you're not activated enough, you probably want to chill out on the zinc. Okay. So these two metals work together to create balance and harmony. So another example of overstimulation is insomnia. Okay, so if you are on the copper IUD, I would look at taking zinc to help there, or just get rid of it. And I guess another concern I have is when you insert the IUD into the cervix, you're taking these forceps, you're expanding the cervix, forcibly stretching it out. You are weakening the cervix, weakening vaginal tissue, weakening the pelvic floor. Not good, not good at all. And in general, if you want to get the body in a healing state, you really want to make sure that you are reducing inflammation as much as possible. And so if you feel like this is a deal breaker, like, sorry, I actually can't get off the birth control, you need to think about other areas in your life that is driving inflammation. You need to supplement it with antioxidants, because antioxidants are what fights the inflammation for you, and really just helping your body get into that healed state through minimal stress, minimal activation. Okay, but more on that to come. So that is the section on hormones. Let's move along because I'm very conscious of time and I could talk about this shit all day. So let's talk about nutrition, stress, and inflammation. All right, let's start with the key player here. Okay, the gut. There's a saying, the gut is not like Vegas. You know the saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, the gut is not like Vegas. What happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. Okay, what I mean by that is the gut is like the gatekeeper. Okay, you shall not pass. The gut is trying to keep the bad stuff out and let the good stuff in. So it has plenty of tight junctions, or like gateways, I like to think of them, all along the lining of the intestines. Okay. And it's basically these tight junctions are opening and closing whenever they're interacting with all the things we eat and consume. And it lets in nutrients, it lets in electrolytes, vitamins, minerals, glucose, so on and so forth. But it is also shutting to keep out the toxins, undigested food particles, bacteria, pathogens, right? Now, this is what a healthy gut should do. The issue is something called leaky gut. And you may have heard of this, and we're going to talk about what it is. It is when your gut becomes too leaky, too permeable, and those tight junctions in between no longer stay so tight and they get relaxed, they get loose. It's like bouncers going on break or getting too distracted and letting underage girls into the club. Okay. Those underage girls being the toxins, the things that cause inflammation in the body. Okay. So let's talk about stages. What happens from leaky gut to inflammation in the body? Stage one is obviously the gut becoming very leaky. And this is because of inflammatory foods. When there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, it's constantly trying to fight. It doesn't know what to, it can't handle that toxic load. It can, of course, become leaky. Chronic stress. Stress, or cortisol specifically, makes the intestinal lining permeable. It makes the intestinal lining leaky in and of itself. And that's why a lot of the time you could be eating perfectly fine, and yet you have gut problems. As soon as you go on holiday, you don't care about what you're eating. You're eating gluten, you're eating heaps of sugar, you're eating lots of dairy, and suddenly you're digesting it really well. Well, that's because the chronic stress is not wreaking havoc. Okay. So that's why stress goes away. Our lives become significantly better. Environmental toxins, things like mold, heavy metal poisoning, like the copper toxicity we spoke about, lots of radiation. These can also disturb the gut lining. And lastly, medications like antibiotics, like antidepressants, like birth control. They can make the gut leaky. Now, stage 2 is gut dysbiosis, which is basically an imbalance in the ecosystem that is your microbiome. Now, your gut is not just a bunch of organs, it's actually filled with bacteria. It's filled with even fungi, like a certain fungus or fungi help us digest our food. They help us break down our food, okay? And these are what we call the good bacteria. Now, there is a beautiful ecosystem of bacteria and multiple different kinds of microbes. And what happens is a disturbance in this ecosystem. Like imagine if I came, or if a new species came into this ecosystem and started eating all of the key plants. And then all of a sudden you see old species die, new species take over, and the ecosystem is out of balance. That's basically what's happening here. So these bad bacteria coming into the system are actually thriving and disturbing the balance. And what they do is they release a toxin called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS. And because the gut is leaky and it's letting these toxins in, the LPS enters the bloodstream and it starts to trigger the immune system. Now, as we spoke about before, when your immune system is overactive, it is always in a state of inflammation. Inflammation is good in the short term because it helps us fight bad things and it helps us heal and repair. But when it's chronically activated because the toxins from bad bacteria are constantly being released, it becomes an issue, okay? And this is where we see inflammation in the entire body or the entire system, hence why we say it's systemic inflammation, okay? This is where we see damaged tissues, damage to your organs, because your immune system's working overtime. There's not enough time to actually heal and regenerate. The body's always under attack. And this is where we see autoimmunity. Okay. So autoimmunity is when the immune system is too active. Okay. And a lot of it starts from this 3-stage system. And even something called leaky brain, which we'll talk about on this slide. So this is what systemic inflammation looks like across the body. Obviously, you're going to have the digestive problems, gut infections, which are basically bacterial infections from the dysbiosis happening. You get skin problems. This is inflammation, eczema, acne, rosacea, psoriasis, inflamed joints, allergies, asthma, food sensitivities. These are all examples of autoimmunity. And another autoimmune condition like hypothyroidism, okay? So when your body starts to attack self cells, not just foreign stuff, okay? Insulin resistance, metabolic problems like fatty liver, obesity, just not being able to metabolize as normal, and then cognitive issues. So you know how we spoke about the intestinal lining becoming very leaky and things getting in that shouldn't. The brain is very similar. We have something called a blood-brain barrier, BBB. And the blood-brain barrier can become leaky as well when it's really inflamed. And that means toxins can get in. So imagine you have LPS and toxins getting into the brain. Well, this is the thing. Your brain can't communicate pain in the way your body can. So, you know, we can see pain as gut issues. We can see pain as breaking out on your body and getting flare-ups, but the brain doesn't have pain receptors. So the way the brain communicates pain to you is with cognitive issues, okay? Cognitive issues such as brain fog, depression, anxiety, you get balance issues even, and mobility problems, mood disorders like your bipolar personality issues. ADHD is a huge one as well. And that's why we're seeing a huge rise in it. And even autism, like I think it is over 90% of children with autism have multiple gut issues, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. Why are we seeing such a huge rise in these conditions? Because what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. And we can all agree that the way we live our lives, our food supply, all of the toxins that we are interacting with are just far too much for the system. Okay, so if we look at what is really happening, our nutrient quality is significantly diminished because our soil is so bad. We see our food supply being sprayed with pesticides, glyphosate, antibiotics, which we know disturb the gut, okay? And monocrops. Monocrops are basically forcing a crop to grow in an unnatural situation. Think about the fact that strawberries taste amazing and they grow naturally in spring, summertime, and yet we see them year round. And monocrops mean that you have to use really, really harsh chemicals and basically force this thing to grow in a condition where it's not naturally meant to grow. Monocrops are really bad. And that's why people tell you to eat seasonally, because if you eat seasonally, it's likely that these crops are not sprayed with pesticides and glyphosates and antibiotics, and they're actually growing in decent conditions. If you think about the animals, the poor animals, they're fattened up with fake food pellets. They're not pasture raised. They're treated and fed poorly. They're living in a constant chronic state of stress. The cows are being force milked when it's unnatural, and no cow should be expected to produce that much milk. No chicken is expected to produce that many eggs. They're fed hormones. Okay, these hormones are meant to fatten them up to make them look good, but these hormones mess up our hormones. They are not getting sunlight. They are fed antibiotics, and this comes out in our food. So this is obviously a huge problem, the food supply, and it's also messing up our hormones because they're endocrine disruptors. Okay, an endocrine disruptor disrupts the endocrine system. Your endocrine system is what makes your hormones. And then oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is basically any sort of stress that comes from things like radiation, EMFs from Wi-Fi, your phones, 5G cell towers, your beauty products, spraying chemicals in the air with chemtrails, a water supply. Our water supply is filled with fluoride and chlorine, and carcinogens, like literally things that create and cause cancer. We've spoken about mold exposure, heavy metal poisoning from poor quality farmed fish, and in general, the way we view life, the way we live life, hearing about World War III, hearing about the economic crisis of the world and struggling to make ends meet. These are all forms of chronic oxidative stress. Okay. So yes, food is a huge part of it. We're eating lots of refined sugars, lots of unhealthy fats, lots of processed food, lots of seed oils, lots of terribly processed glutens. Okay. But it's a lot more than that. And this is why our guts are going crazy, going haywire. And this is why we're seeing a rise in these kinds of problems. So let's talk about how to fix these issues with an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay. There are so many different kinds. You have Mediterranean, carnivore, raw diet. There's so many. The point is that they are all anti-inflammatory. They are all from single sourced ingredients. They're low processed, and they are very Paleolithic. So paleo means ancient. So it's about eating the way our ancient civilizations used to eat, eating the way your ancestors used to eat. Okay. And that looks different for everyone. So some person might thrive on lots of veggies. I'm not one of those people. My ancestors came from the Mediterranean, came from Upper Egypt and Northern Africa, and we didn't have access to as many fruits and veggies as someone from maybe the Balkan region or Northern Europe. Okay, so it's about eating as close to the way your ancestors did, and you do not have to cut out certain food groups. I would just focus on finding the best quality version of them, okay? So the happier and well-fed the animal, the happier and well-fed you will be. That's why I eat grass-fed meat, I eat halal, I eat pasture-raised eggs, pasture-raised chicken, hormone-free. These are the things I'd be looking at. You don't have to cut out gluten. In fact, gluten-free does not equal healthy, okay? Gluten-free products tend to be just as processed, just as inflammatory, filled with seed oils and additives and artificial flavors and sugars. I would look at something like sourdough, organic oats, organic soy even, because you know that the crops have been treated really well. They haven't been sprayed. They haven't been genetically modified, okay? Wild caught fish are healthier. They're less fatty because they're able to swim. They're eating their natural diet. They're not eating pellets and antibiotics, and they're not so contaminated. Buying from farmers that you trust, farmers that most likely are a lot more ethical. You're supporting local. It's often cheaper, and you could even find organic produce. Make sure you're eating seasonally to avoid monocrops. These are the places that I would start. Okay. So to heal your gut, do it in this particular order. Okay. Actually, I should probably put stress first. Reduce stress. Okay. Stop the cause of inflammation. So go back to this slide, look at what foods you're eating a lot of, look at what needs to be reduced here, get yourself a water filter, get rid of the mold in your house. Okay, stop watching world news, switch off your Wi-Fi at night, keep your phone away from you as you sleep, things like that. Then repair the intestinal lining. Now, this is something your body can naturally do when it's not inflamed, but there are supplements that you can take to speed up the process of healing. Things like zinc L-carnosine, things like slippery elm. Slippery elm is kind of like aloe vera for your gut lining. So, you know, when you're really burnt, sunburnt, and then you put aloe vera, it's very soothing. Slippery elm does that. You can also look at glutamine. These are really great ways to repair and fix this leaky gut. Build up a healthy microbiome. So balancing the good and bad bacteria, starving the bad bacteria. Okay. Minimal sugar, minimal processed foods. We also want to look at fermented foods, which you may have heard of, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, and just good probiotics and prebiotics. And then we've spoken about stress. Lastly, this is a very underrated one, which is to aid digestion. Digestion is more than just these, okay? Digestion is actually what you do before you start eating. So if you sit down, actually, let's say it's time to eat. You're back-to-back meetings all day, you're really overstressed and activated, you quickly scoff down your meal, you're not even present, okay? You're chewing really fast, you may be eating on the go, and you're not really in that rest, digest stage or state. It can be very hard to digest your food, okay? So slow down. Sit outside without your phone, without YouTube to distract you. Take a few deep breaths before you eat. Look at your food. Actually, look at what you're eating. Smell it. Smelling food can actually activate the digestive system and get it going. When you start to salivate, those are enzymes coming to your mouth so that you can begin breaking down food. Okay, so when you're not salivating, you're actually missing out on a key step in digestion. Take your time, chew slowly, okay? Be with your meal. And I'm sorry, respectfully, your job can wait. Your work can wait. Your life can wait. If you're not doing this key step, you're not actually getting into rest, digest. I can't expect that anything will improve. And that leads me to this pyramid. This is what I would say the hierarchy of improving your gut health. So base of the pyramid is where everyone should start, okay? Good gut health behaviors, reducing stress, get into rest, digest, eat just decently, not even perfectly, just decently. Get good sleep, move your body, because moving your body helps you digest as well. Then we can go ahead up the ladder, improve your food quality, go for just whole foods, probiotics, the gut repair supplements I was talking about. Then we would go next, elimination diet, if the others haven't worked. Then I might even get some testing done if I suspect I have an infection like SIBO or H. pylori, and then I would do a gut protocol or a parasite cleanse if you've been tested. And then top of the pyramid is, oh yeah, let's get some bloom greens powder. Let's get some AG1. Let's try this supplement out. I've heard it's really good. This is how you should approach your gut health. Now, what do people usually do? The opposite. So they start at the top. Oh yeah, let me just buy this thing that's trending on TikTok. Then let me just, try a parasite cleanse because I've heard it's really good. I'm pretty sure I have one. Then it's okay, I'll just cut out 3 food groups, which is wild to me. And then it's okay, I'll start these supplements. And then it's, oh, is my nervous system even in a state to digest right now? Am I even taking my time to eat? Am I even like can I even eat because I'm so stressed? Like it's a very bottom up approach that people take. And I encourage you to switch it around and actually start from the base. Last point I want to make on nutrition, healing through reducing stress and inflammation is that you can't do this when you're under eating and overtraining. So yes, you can clean up your diet. That doesn't mean cut calories. Yes, you might want to lose weight. Right now, fat loss should be the last thing on your mind. It should be getting healthy because fat loss is much easier when you are healthy. And if you're someone with a history of chronic yo-yo dieting, if you're somebody who struggles to lose weight, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason why. You're always cutting calories without reducing stress and inflammation. So stop doing that. Training, too much. Training is good. Too much stress. You're adding to an already full stress bucket, okay? So you got to pick one. You got to pick one. Are you healing first or are you adding more stress to your body? Are you focusing on quality of your nutrition, or are you focusing on cutting calories? Okay. Don't fight fire with fire. Moving on, train like a lady. Let's talk about how to grow muscle, how to grow strength without overdoing it. All right. Everyone knows about progressive overload. I'm sure. Surely people know what progressive overload is. If you don't, it's all over in the internet. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Progressive overload is working harder over time. Okay. Lifting more weight, doing more reps. And you'd be surprised to see how many people still say, okay, I'll just do more sets. I'll just do a set of 25 reps. That's freaking wild. If you keep your rep range moderate, like 6 reps to 12 reps, you can grow really well if you just focus on adding weight over time. And it's not going to be as fatiguing. Imagine doing 50 sets a week versus doing 20. Okay, you can literally do less than half the volume, but you'll still grow because you are adding weight and reps over time. Okay, so before you go ahead and add more sets in your week, before you go ahead and do 7 exercises, keep it to 3, keep it to 4, and actually make those sets count. Actually grow or build, okay, by adding weight and reps. You will grow without over fatiguing the system. And likewise, making sure that you're training with a decent intensity. So a lot of people, they train and they add weight, but then they stop way too soon. Okay. So we want to go close to failure. Failure being, I can't do another rep. Not just my brain has given up, not I'm being a little pussy, but like I truly cannot do another rep. Most people don't even know what failure feels like. So I would encourage you to go to failure just so you know what it is. And then in the long term, train about 2 to 3 reps away from it. Okay. So you're training just close enough to failure without doing too much. Because if you're always training to failure, and I used to be this person, you will burn out, you will get overtraining syndrome. It is not a good thing. But the harder you train, the less sets you need to do. Okay. The harder you train, the faster you're going to grow. So we really want to take advantage of training at the right intensity with the right weight without doing too much work overall. Okay. Next point is to pick exercises with a high stimulus to fatigue ratio. So if we were to think about 2 different kinds of exercises, say a leg extension and a barbell back squat, which exercise would you say is harder or more fatiguing? You would probably say the back squat, and you would probably be right. This is a very fatiguing exercise, fatiguing on the body, on the nervous system, right? Now, let me ask you this. Which exercise do you think you could absolutely cook your quads with? Like you can push close to failure. You can really, really like feel the tension on the muscle. Would it be the back squat or would it be the leg extension? If you chose the leg extension, you are correct. It is because you are locked into a machine where you don't have to worry about bracing and breathing. You don't have to worry about balance. You don't have to worry about coordinating like 70 different muscles. You are literally locked in. You don't need to spend any energy on anything besides extending your leg and feeling the damn burn and going as close to failure. This is a high stimulus to fatigue ratio exercise. The stimulus is high, the fatigue is low. And when you are healing, but you still want to get bang for your buck in your training, you want to focus your effort around exercises where you are very stable, you are locked into a machine, you're not doing a really hard movement, it's a very simple movement pattern, and you're getting a lot of tension on that muscle. That way, you're not cooking your nervous system, you're not getting too much fatigue, but you're getting a lot of value out of that exercise, okay? These are the exercises I'd focus on. Not to say that you can't do your squats and your deadlifts and lunges, but I would just keep them to 1 per workout when you're healing. After you've healed, go ahead and go hard with your training, but you've just got to prioritize healing first, minimizing training stress, but still getting a good stimulus out of it, still feeling like you've worked hard, okay? In terms of your cardio, I would keep the intense cardio, like the sprinting, long distance running, HIIT training, CrossFit classes. I'd keep that to your follicular phase, which is when your estrogen is high. And remember, we said estrogen is supportive of growing and doing your cardio. So that is when you finish your bleed till right after you ovulate. That is the time to go hard with your training and your cardio. After ovulation, in the luteal phase, when you're meant to slow down, I would go for low intensity cardio, walking, Pilates, steady state exercise, like just going on the Stairmaster at a moderate intensity for a long time, okay? Not pushing those high heart rate intervals, okay? And then lastly, learning how to auto-regulate. Why I say it like that, regulate. If you don't know what that means, it is learning how to let the body lead. You got to read your body, figure out what your body is actually telling you, and meet it where it's at. So on day 2 of my bleed, I can train, but I know I'm not going to go crazy hard. So I'm going to do 2 sets instead of 3 sets. I'm not going to do the squat then. I'm probably going to leave it till when I finish my period. I might just do machines only today. I'm probably not going to go to 2 reps try from failure. I might go 5 reps try from failure because I don't want to overwork my body when it's still in a very sensitive state. I might drop the weights a little bit. Okay. These are examples of auto regulating. Just being really mindful of knowing when to push and knowing when to pull back. And you can take longer rest periods. You can skip a day. Okay. So take an extra rest day. You can do less sets. You can do less weight. You can alter the exercise in any way that you need. These are ways that you can auto regulate. If you follow these key principles, you will do really well with your training without burning out. All right, let's move on to the final component of today's workshop, which is all about mental health, nervous system, trauma, and how to regulate all of that. Okay, so here are the biggest misconceptions about trauma. The first one being that it is a psychological issue and not a physiological one. That is actually incorrect. It is usually the other way around. It is more something stored in the body and less something thought. Not to say that you don't know your trauma, although to be fair, a lot of people don't remember their trauma because they repress the memory or they suppress the memory or they never had any memory of it to begin with. But trauma is more felt through the body than it is felt in the mind. The second thing is that talking about your trauma can fix it. This is actually not true in a lot of cases because someone who is highly triggered and someone who has not dealt with it, they don't know how to feel their feelings, they dissociate from their body, they really just try not to think about it, don't have the capacity to handle it. And so when you sit down and talk to someone, often a stranger, perpetually because you're going to a psychologist, or even if it is someone that is close to you that you feel safe with, you can re-traumatize yourself because you don't have the ability to handle the immense emotion flooding that comes with bringing up a repressed memory, okay? Now, the third point I've kind of already touched on, which is that the person isn't even aware or remembers the trauma. You know, if you've got gaps in your memories from when you were a child or an early teenager, you're very forgetful, or maybe you have no idea that anything really happened to you, but you can tell that you're very triggered and you have this like overactivation of your nervous system, you're always burnt out, maybe you actually don't remember it because it happened to you really early on in life. Maybe, you know, a certain smell or a certain place triggers you, but you don't know why. And that's because you don't actually form any key or core memories before the age of 5. And that's why we say like trauma is something that's felt in the body, you know? And lastly, there's a misconception that trauma is a terribly harmful event or some sort of abuse. Yes, a lot of the times it is, but most of the time it's actually not. Most of the time it can occur from something very simple, something that seems harmless or not a big deal. And we're actually going to talk about that in a while. And also, trauma isn't actually the event itself. It's how you respond. It's how your body holds onto those emotions and the sensations. Okay, and that's why. Or there's a key difference in how people handle trauma. There are some people that are very resilient because they have healthy nervous systems, and so when things that happen to them that are traumatic, they can handle it well and they're not easily triggered and they move on very quickly. They know how to integrate it with their system. They can really regulate their nervous systems. And that's probably because they had a really healthy childhood. They were taught how to regulate from their mother and their father. People who did not have this, people who were not taught how to regulate, babies who were ignored and they felt like their cries were not heard, their voices were not heard, their needs were not listened to, they end up with really dysregulated nervous systems, even if it wasn't that bad, that their mom just let them cry themselves to sleep, that can actually be very traumatic, and it can mess up how resilient you become in the future. So it reaches a point where you have a small minor car accident, no one got hurt, and yet it triggers you so much, and you think, damn, why is this affecting me so much? Why am I so weak, right? It's not you. You're not the problem. It's the nervous system. There has been a trauma that you probably didn't even realize traumatized you, and it was something really simple, like crying, being forced to cry yourself to sleep as an infant. That is an example of how trauma is felt by the body and how it can mess up the nervous system. So those are key misconceptions. Now let's talk about what actually happens when the nervous system gets dysregulated. So we have some event, okay? And again, this is, it's not necessarily my house burnt down. I was abused, okay? Let's use an example of the hot baby. I love this example because it really highlights how trauma can start. So we have a scenario. We've got a bundled up baby in a supermarket. Maybe the infant is 6 months old, and the supermarket's really hot, and they're starting to feel really overheated. So this is how your body or your nervous system responds to stress. There is a 3-tiered system: fight, then flight, then freeze. Okay. This is how you're going to fight a stressor. As a baby, you're going to start kicking, screaming, making a fuss, turning red. Okay. This is not a huge deal, being hot, so you would think, but this is still a stressor. This is still impacting the nervous system. This is still activating the stress response, okay? Now, for whatever reason, the mother does not pick up on this cue from her baby. She frets and tries to shut her baby up, stop crying, stop screaming, and she's not picking up on that cue, and maybe that's because she doesn't know how to regulate. Maybe that's how she was raised, and that's why we see cycles of generational trauma being passed on from generation to generation, because we're not taught how to self-regulate, So because the baby's cries were not listened to, they tried to fight it, it didn't work, you would then move on to flight. Now, if you were an adult and you were really hot, and let's say for whatever reason you can't take your jumper off, which would be to fight the stress, right? Maybe you have nothing underneath. Okay, what would you do? You get out of the damn supermarket, right? You get some in. Unfortunately, babies do not have access to this. They can't run away. Okay, so they're immediately going to move on to the third level of the survival response, which is to just shut down. They're going to freeze, and the baby is going to stop crying. The mother thinks that she has calmed her baby down, the baby's fine, but what has actually happened is a shutdown response. The overheating was just too much for the system, too distressing physically and psychologically, and the baby doesn't want to feel that. It's too much. It's causing the baby to disconnect from their body. And over time, when you constantly are taught not how to regulate, you're never taught from your mom how to soothe, okay? You end up stuck in this cycle, okay? So this is where you're always dysregulated, okay? And this is where you can become what's called a functional freezer, okay? You're functionally still working, you're still living life, but you're always stuck on mode, okay? And this is really problematic because you have not only disconnected from your body, but your body can't heal when it's in the survival response, okay? There's 2 main branches of the nervous system. You have the fight, flight, freeze, and then you have rest, digest. Fight, flight, freeze is about getting you out of danger as soon as possible. It's very good for us. But when you're always here, you're never able to regenerate tissue. You're never able to heal from damage that happens to your body. You're never able to reduce inflammation. There's huge healing capabilities that your body is capable of doing, but that's only when you are not activated, when you are in rest digest. Okay. And this is why people with trauma end up with chronic health issues, because they are always stuck on, they're getting fatigued all the time. There's adrenal burnout or cortisol burnout. And it's because they've never, or they don't know how to get out of fight, flight, freeze. And a lot of people think that freeze, they misunderstand what freeze is. Freeze, just because you've calmed down and you're not, doesn't mean you're not activated, okay? Just because you've dissociated from your body doesn't mean that you're calm. No, dissociating is a survival response. It is not the same as rest digest. It is not the same as truly being calm, okay? And so we need to fix this. We need to learn how to self-regulate, something that was probably not taught to you as a kid, okay? So if you are someone who has disconnected from your body, you might accidentally hold in your pee for hours without realizing it. You might ignore the fact that you're cold. You don't even notice it, okay? Or you don't feel the need to go up and get up and put on a jumper or put on the heater. Someone who isn't a functional freezer, they might shut down and get really overwhelmed when they're in public. They avoid confrontation and they feel really small and they just want to get out of the situation and they are just always activated. So to heal the nervous system, to get into a state where you can regulate, you can heal, you can get into this truly rejuvenated state, we need to fix this problem, okay? And the way to do that is to lean into your emotions. If you want to get rid of this trauma, you need to lean into your body. You need to get into your body. And I know that it's hard to do when all you've been taught is to disconnect from your body because that was the only way you knew how to survive. But we need to stop retreating from emotional pain. We do it because it's a very uncomfortable, distressing feeling. Just like I'm not going to keep my hand over the fire, right? I'm going to try to retreat from that. We do that with emotional pain, okay? We don't know how to sit with our feelings. And this is where we dissociate. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm out of body completely and I'm like hovering over myself and seeing myself from the third person and I'm depersonalized. It's not that. It's literally, like I said, you've held your pee in for hours and you don't actually know how to let it go. You don't know how to read your body's cues. You didn't realize there's a lot of tension in your jaw for the last 3 hours, okay? So there's a 3-step system, and this is a long process. Don't think you can get this done in a day, a week, a month even, okay? You're going to spend most of your time in step 1 and 2, and I encourage you to not rush into step 3. Step 3 will happen in its own time when your body is ready. The main message I want to get you to understand before we even get into this is let the body lead. Don't force anything onto your body. Don't bring up repressed or suppressed memories at all. Don't force yourself to release a trauma because you can't. Don't go do a cold plunge or a trauma meditation. Don't do that. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. All I want you to do is let the body lead. So step 1 is to feel your feelings when they come up, because they will, right? You might feel discomfort, you might feel cold, you might feel hungry, you might feel uncomfortable, you might feel overwhelmed, you might get a quick memory when you smell a certain smell or taste a certain taste or see something in particular. Feel them, okay? Notice when you start to dissociate, and I want you to get mindful. Like mindfulness is key here, and shift the attention into your body. Shift your attention into what's going on. Where am I feeling tension? Where am I feeling? What am I feeling? Okay. And it takes time to learn how to notice when you're dissociating because it's very counterintuitive. It's like, oh, I'm dissociated. How do I know? Right? You just need to start bringing it to the attention, your attention, making it a goal. My goal is to always know when to get into body. To be fair, sometimes I'm working for hours and I haven't even realized, oh, I should probably go eat. That's normal. That's fine. But it's about knowing that anytime I want, I can switch my mind, switch my attention back into my body and do check-ins. Like you got to check in with yourself many times a day. Maybe that's what you should start with. Check in with yourself every few hours. Do you need to pass gas? Do you need to use the bathroom? Do you feel the need to cry? Do you feel the need to dance? Do you feel the need to run? Whatever it is, I want you to feel that feeling. Step 2 is to build upon that and build capacity to feel the feeling and address the need. So if you feel like running, address the need and go run. If you feel the need to pass gas, address the need and pass the gas. If you feel the need to scream, freaking do it. Nobody's stopping you. Obviously, make sure you're doing it in a comfortable, safe space where you're not going to scare anybody, but actually lead. Go ahead and let your body lead. Do the thing that it's asking you to do. Now, it's also important that you titrate the work. So titrating is to do it drip by drip. Do not flood the system. You got to drip it slowly because when you're working with a highly triggered nervous system, you can be very overwhelmed, okay? And you might not feel like you have the ability to handle that, which is understandable. So you want to have an exit strategy when the emotions become too overwhelming, okay? That could be, all right, I know I'm going to have this feeling. It's going to come up at any time and I'm going to let myself sit with it. But whenever it gets too distressing, I'm going to get up I'm going to play a song that I really love that calms me down. I'm going to watch an episode of my comfort TV show. I'm going to go drink some water and do some deep breathing. I'm going to go to the gym. Okay. You're not necessarily ignoring it. You're just accepting that this is all you can handle right now and you're moving away from it. I'm going to go have a cup of warm tea, right? So don't force yourself at any time to face a buried emotion, okay? Let them come as they come because your body needs to know that you can handle it. And as you build this capacity, your body will eventually know that you can handle the trauma when it comes, and it will rise at the right time. So don't force it. And then step 3 is to get the stress energy out, the fight energy that you never got the chance to express because you were in shutdown mode. Let the body lead. So let's just say you were attacked as a child or assaulted, and you felt the need to fight. You wanted to hit and scream and run and kick and punch, and you never got the chance to do that. Maybe that's how your body wants to release the trauma, but it's a lot of energy inside. It's a lot of stress energy, okay? When you're ready, when the nervous system is ready, that is going to come up to the surface and let it out however it wants to. Okay. And maybe you don't feel the need to kick, scream, shout, punch. Maybe you just feel called to run and run and run because you were locked up in your room every time you had an argument with your mom. The trauma release needs to be related to the trauma itself. It needs to be direct. It needs to address the core issue. And that's why you can't biohack it away. You can't do breath work and cold showers and plunges and sauna and take supplements and do trauma release exercises and even go do psychedelics like mushrooms or ayahuasca to get rid of it, because it's not actually getting to the root of what happened. And maybe that's not how your body wanted to release it. And oftentimes, when you do biohacks like a cold plunge, you think it's regulating your nervous system, but it's actually reinforcing this freeze or this shutdown. Okay. You get into this really cold, like Antarctic level of cold, and you disconnect from your body because you're like, no, I want to do this. This is good for me. I've been told it's good for me, but I really can't handle it. I can't handle how much it is. So what are you going to do? You're going to disconnect from your body. You're going to dissociate like the hot baby, right? It's not a good thing. Same with psychedelics. Like a lot of people who have trauma, they go to Peru and they go see a shaman and they do an ayahuasca ceremony. You're taking someone who doesn't even know how to feel their feelings and putting them in a very unpredictable, overwhelming emotional experience. I couldn't even handle that. And you can see when it becomes too distressing, your body's going to react by freezing, by shutting down. So a lot of these biohacks don't actually work. They are just reinforcing the shutdown. Okay. So you need to let the body do what it wants to do and release the trauma in the way that it wants to. Okay. Last note, last slide before we wrap up and move into the glow blueprint is mind states. In the process of healing, in the process of getting down to the level of your body and healing trauma, you may feel like you are 50 shades of messed up, and that is completely understandable. I encourage you to really address your inner self-talk and become a curious psychologist, not the guilty patient. Don't berate yourself and say, wow, I am so messed up. Wow, I'm never going to heal from this. Wow, this is too much. I can't believe I like, you know what I mean? No, don't be guilty. Don't let yourself become overwhelmed. Become curious. Curiosity is actually very, very helpful in this process. When you are in a state of guilt, when you're in a state of shame, when you are berating yourself, your inner critic takes over, it actually shuts you down. It strengthens a very primitive part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is the center of emotion. It's where you feel like, the fight flight energy. It's where you feel like you fear. It helps you feel fear. Okay. And it also activates a part of the brain that makes you very obsessed, makes you brood and overthink and just get so caught up in the emotion. These are parts of the brain that we do not actually want to activate when we heal. So we want to activate the reward system, the memory system, okay? And you know what activates that? Curiosity, being curious about the problem, being interested in how you are, why you are the way you are. And oh, that's interesting. Like almost disconnecting emotionally from it. Like, yeah, okay, I know I'm messed up, but why? Oh, interesting. You know what I mean? Like you're the psychologist. It puts you or shifts you into learning mode, okay? It actually increases your dopamine. It strengthens the reward centers of your brain, okay? This is what you need to do, not only to seek knowledge, but to retain it, okay? Which is why healing is so much about education. It's not just about learning the first time, but remembering and applying. And being curious helps you do that. So I'm aware we are going to be over time. I won't keep you much longer. I just wanted to quickly talk about what next. So you've obviously gotten a lot of information from today, and I wanted to talk about the next stage if you want to work with me. Okay, so the Glow Blueprint is a 10-week program, and it's a wellness retreat as well if you are in Melbourne. Um, you're going to get one-on-one coaching with me. You're going to get tailored nutrition, tailored training. If you don't want to train at all, that's totally fine. And we're going to go through a weekly workshop every week, okay, covering these topics, basically everything that we touched on today and then some. We're also going to have group training sessions. Okay, so this is perfect for someone who wants to get into the gym or wants to learn how to train without burning out. You're going to get heaps of educational resources, ebooks are going to be big, trackers, lots of that. And then finishing up at a weekend wellness retreat. If you're not from Melbourne, you can still join in for the online components. It'll just be the group PT sessions and the wellness retreat that you can't attend. So have a conversation with me and we can sort something out for you. So if you want more information about it, head over to my website. You will get these slides, which will have the link in it. Otherwise, head over to the link in my bio on all of my socials and you can read up on it. You can apply as well. And I also have an exclusive offer for you guys. So I've already said that you guys are in the top 10% just by your dedication tonight. Just being here tells me that you are a good fit for the Glow Blueprint. You're someone who wants to heal, someone who wants to be educated, someone who wants to become or get in the driver's seat and actually take control of their lives again. Okay. So if you sign up at the end of this week, by the end of this week, you will also get 4 weeks of free one-on-one coaching with me after Glow ends. And if you want to know how I do my one-on-one coaching, that's also on my website. And this will really just seal the deal, you know, help you to follow through with all the goals and everything that you would have learned over the 10 weeks. Now, it is only for you girls who have attended live in real time. Okay. So you have until Friday, the 3rd of May to apply. Have a discovery call with me, which is a quick 10-15 minute call after the application and to secure your deposit in order to be eligible. Okay. So that is it from me. Let's wrap up with questions. So let me go ahead and open up the chat box. All right, we got some questions going.